But yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you for taking time out of your day to celebrate with us. And we're gonna go ahead and get started. Our first presenter, our first designer today is Paige Berger. So Paige, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Yeah, so my thesis is called The Monday Channel, and it's a video game inspired by a local artist, Chris Monday, who goes by The Monday Channel. So the basis of this is a 2-level video game that's inspired by each song. So this is the first loading channel, and then on the others part of the slide is like a little GIF of like what that first level looks like. And the song is called Creek Walking. So it's kind of a more relaxed ditty song about love and about young love. And so this is not my personal story, but Chris Monday's story. So it was really fun to kind of talk how he wanted to see his like experience of being a young child and like being in love. So that's kind of what the first scene is about. And then also there will be a link to play this on the lower left-hand side. It'll be in the chat too. If you could go to the next slide, that'd be great. Thank you. So again, this is like the first scene. On the left, there's kind of like a playthrough. It goes underwater, which is pretty neat. And then on the right-hand side is the character. So that's kind of based off of Chris Monday, and he had a rat tail as a kid. So we wanted to include a rat tail. So that's kind of like his like heart and like a symbolic piece of him. And then I guess it's kind of being covered up by the video, but there's also these fish icons that are in the water, and there's kelp, and there's just a lot of different kinds of like relaxing imagery. If you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And then this is the next level. It's called Bill and King, and it's more of like a high tech song. It's really fast, and you're being chased by Death, which is like a character in this game. And you have to kind of travel through caves and these kind of like stalactite rocks, and it's kind of a more fast-paced song. So that's kind of the basis of both levels. The best advice I can give is just go and play it yourself. That's what it's for. I would love to hear any feedback about it too. And go and check out Chris Monday's work, The Monday Channel. I think that's the best way to experience his new albums coming out soon, so that would be great. So this is all done on Unity, which is like a really good video game platform too. So it's been really fun to experience that. And then if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. This is just kind of like the transitional works. So we have a reload screen and then a level selection. So if you're playing through this and if you hit the menu screen, you can kind of go through the different selections of levels. So yeah, I just kind of recommend to go check it out and have fun with it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Paige? No?
No.
Well, then we will move on. Our next designer is Ansel. Ansel, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead.
Howdy, yo, what's up? My name is Ansel Chen, and then my topic for this thesis project is renewal and the gap. So I come across some article about fast fashion, which cause serious environmental issues such as air pollution and water pollution. So I came across some, some article, and then I try to reflect and to design and encourage all the people, no matter you are woman or man, to wear like some garment made by used fabric or even just clothes. So I did some research, and then I went to some thrift shop in local Athens and pick up some garment, and then I made a pattern and then to create one vest. So basically, what I'm trying to say is based on the fabric. So if I tell you that it's a brand new fabric, you have no doubt about it. But actually, in fact, those garments I pick up are secondhand, or some people even do not want to the fabric anymore, so they throw out and then donate to local community. So I really try to encourage all the people to support the green fashion, and also to buy less clothes, but to reuse your clothes in the past or the clothes you want to throw away. And also in the next slide, I also pick out one garment, which is synthetic fiber. So I recreate and design one sweatpants. So as you can see closely on the pants, there's some white line across the pants, which kind of indicate the pollution, which many fashion industry produce or already impact our only home Earth. So I try to encourage and also to increase the public awareness of the pollution, and also try to create a better or a new solution for our green future. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ansel. That was lovely. Our next designer is Rebecca. Rebecca, go for it.
Thank you. My project is called Audio Perception, and when I listen to any music or hear any sounds, I always visualize some type of image. And that got me thinking about what type of images can other people think about, as everybody is different. And I was just curious about how different people thought of different images just using a simple sound. So I made a quiz taking 10 different sounds that I found and asked 10 different people if they could tell me, just say what they thought the sounds were. And based off of that, I got a variety of answers. For example, the first one is just a wood hitting wood. And from there, I got people who would say that it sounded like a pencil eraser just tapping on a table, or it actually sounded like wood, or a drum, or a stapler even, or metal. And from there, you can go to the next slide. From there, I took 4 different objects for each one, and I illustrated each of them. And these are the variety of objects. As you can tell, it's kind of random right now, but from here, I then made a video and put them to the original sounds to show you how each people may have thought of these sounds or these images when they heard these sounds. Go to the next slide, please. If you could play the video if we have time for that, that'd be great.
Please let me know if you can't hear it.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Rebecca? No? Okay. Oops. Our next designer is Ella. So Ella, whenever you are ready, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My thesis is called Why Before We Buy, and it focuses on the topics of sustainable fashion and fast fashion through illustration, research, and data. I was inspired to create this project from my own personal interests in fashion and sustainability. And it was important to me that within my site, my concepts flowed together and felt like a continuous illustration, allowing the pages to connect together as the user scrolled through the information and illustrations. And these are some of my initial concepts for that idea. And so these are my final objects and colors. I chose to use hand-drawn illustrations and bright colors to give off a fun and lighthearted feel, as data can often seem like very dooming and hard to visualize and conceptualize. And it was important to me that my project be informing in a way that was not heavy or burdening with numbers and facts, but could be easily understood with my representations. And so coming together, my site encompasses concepts concerning the water use in the industry, how many items are sold a year, and also simple ways you can help yourself. So the link to my website is there at the bottom and will also be posted in the chat for anyone interested. And that's it. Thank you, guys.
Any questions for Ella? Nope. Okay. Daniela, whenever you're ready.
All right, hello, I am Daniela, and my thesis project is called Food for Thought, and it's a website that breaks down becoming eco-friendly into small monthly challenges, easy to follow recipes, and simple information on the life cycle of a fork. So these right here are just some of my process work, beginning illustrations, possible layouts, and possible colors and typefaces. And if you go to my next slide, it has all of my final illustrations, color palette, and typefaces. I chose to go this route with the bright colors and simple line drawings that they're slightly offsetted because I thought it made it inviting and friendly when you're talking about such a scary topic about climate change and the environment. So then if you go onto my final slide here, this is the final project. So as I said before, I have the monthly challenge section, and this is where you pick one thing each month to do. The one I have mocked up here is eating meat only on the weekends, because that's the biggest thing a consumer can do to reduce their carbon footprint. And it goes into the recipes section, which is 6 vegetarian recipes that all include the same ingredients. So you're not buying tons of new ingredients for one dish and never using it again. So it's cutting down on your food waste. And then the last section is the life cycle of a fork. So it starts with how plastic is created. Then it moves on into 3 ways it ends up. So either in a landfill, in the ocean, or being recycled. And then my final section on that is just food for thought, essentially, which is how the government is really the cause of the issue. A lot of times I feel like it's put on consumers. So I wanted to break down easy ways that consumers can help. But in reality, we should be pressuring our government officials to make laws that protect our environment. My link is in the chat right now, so if you want to view the full website, you can do it down there. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Okay. Right, if there are any questions, we will move on. Olivia, when you're ready.
Hello, everyone. My name is Olivia Dubke, and my thesis project is titled Let's Play Outside. My project investigates how e-commerce, package design used in subscription box services can provide purposeful interactions between children on the autism spectrum and their parents or caregivers. This first slide shows some of the issues that I found when researching other subscription boxes for children with autism. On the left are examples of pre-existing subscription kits that contain sensory toys and some guided activities. I noticed the lack of structure and usability of the boxes and wanted to create strategically designed packages to provide engaging experiences for the child and parent/caregivers through activities that promote play in the outdoors. In the middle, underneath solutions, are some of the design solutions that I wanted to include in my box, which included bright colors, visual depictions of items that could be used, and simple typefaces, as well as layouts that would be engaging. On the right are my original sketches for the logo, and I wanted to use a hand-drawn typeface that I ended up actually creating myself. You can go to the next slide now. So here are the final product images of the box that I designed to be used in the subscription service. Each box will contain 1 outdoor activity and all the supplies needed to make the experience enjoyable for all involved. You can go to the next slide. Something really important and something that was a really big part of my research was how the outdoor playing in the outdoors could really be beneficial for the children and for the parents as well. And delving into the natural world and exploring your senses is an important part for developing minds. And my thesis creates opportunities for play that families with autistic children may not always have the time for without the stress of it being a test or a form of therapy. It also encourages the parent to let the child to lead the activities, which promotes confidence and learning and communication for the child. So here are some of the different support cards that are included in each box that can be used during the activities that are specific for each activity that would be in the box to make the activity more inclusive for everybody involved. And that's it. Thank you.
Any questions for Olivia?
Just lots of compliments.
Oh, well, that's great. We'll move on then. Chloe, whenever you're ready.
All right, thanks, Lesia. My name's Chloe, and for my senior thesis, I have created a font designed to be more easily readable for people with symptoms of dyslexia. The purpose of this font is to prevent the brain from switching letters around by using eye-catching forms within the glyphs. For example, lowercase b, d, p, and q, those are all basically the same letter, just flipped around. So by creating variation in the bowls and in the stems, we can distinguish each letter as their own. The font's name is Jackson, which is named after the book series Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I chose Jackson because of the positive portrayal of adolescents with ADHD and dyslexia, which is encouraging for young readers who may have the same conditions. Jackson is a variable font, which comes in 3 variations, each with different shapes and complexities. Each of those 3 variations comes in 4 weights, so there are 12 fonts total. In my process work, I color-coded the variations in accordance to which stem I used in that particular variation standard. In order for this whole set of glyphs to be different, but still part of the same font, I created pieces of glyphs to put together like a puzzle, like the bowls and stems that you can see on the left side of the slide. If you look at the descenders in the P of the first 3 lorem ipsums on the right side of the slide, you can see that the yellow stem is used first, the pink one next, and the blue one, which has the most complexity, last. Next slide, please. For this to be deliverable, I created a website for Jackson. I chose a relatively muted and limited color palette so as to prevent wandering eyes from straying away from the words. Of course, I included Greek motifs as a nod to the origin of Jackson's name. The columns frame the demo type when the page first loads in, and the background with the lightning shape references Zeus, the Greek god of thunder, and the first book in the Percy Jackson series, which is The Lightning Thief. And the GIF above the column includes Jackson typed in each of the 3 variations. Next slide, please. On the website, you can scroll through to see each variation of the font in action. And if you're interested in checking out Jackson for yourself, you can go to the website that is listed on the slide and download which font is right for you. I will note, from what I've seen, the website works best on Google Chrome. So here's that. And with that, that's all I have.
If there aren't any questions for Chloe, then we can move on. Well, that's good news. John, whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you, Lesia. So for my thesis project, I have touched on a topic that is not new, but kind of in a new form. And so my project's essentially on brand humanization and personality, and how it's being used today in social media. And so I was specifically looking at brands like Wendy's, Apple, Denny's even, and how their social media usage has changed over the last decade or so since kind of the birth of social media. And I found it really interesting how social media posts, which conventionally started out as kind of very typical advertisement and form, like very standard promo deals. These are the products we have, like very traditional classic advertising, kind of slowly shifted over time towards brands using their social medias as ways to kind of interact with users the same way that any kind of popular account would. So they kind of started acting like real people on social media. And so this topic's really interesting to me because I find that it's still just an effective form of advertising. It's just simply a lot stealthier about it. And I think that this dichotomy of personas is really interesting because on one hand, you have this online personality that this brand has kind of created. Like Wendy's is very famous for being sassy on Twitter, and like they've gotten a lot of buzz and generated a lot of brand recognition because of that fact, especially with younger markets. But there's also this kind of other side of things where these huge companies, which are so entertaining or interesting or lovable even on social media, are still just that, large corporations. And many of them commit very unethical actions and have unethical things following them up and down the supply chain. So I really specifically focused on Wendy's, and that's kind of this section. I did a lot of research into the various kind of controversies that they got into, and also like the timeline of their social media usage. So I just have like, for this slide, a couple of really funny or cutesy kind of Wendy's tweets contrasted with headlines of a very specific incident, which Wendy's faced a couple years back, in which they were exposed essentially for sourcing their tomatoes from a farm in Mexico that was notorious for treating its employees very badly, if you can call them employees, unfortunately, because they were kind of there's been specific cases of people being forced not to leave and being chased after if they run away. And one specific incident that I kind of referenced in my project was a pregnant woman who was working on the farm asked for more food at the meal break and was slapped in response. And I just thought that was really awful. And it's funny that your cutesy little like redheaded friend online who will like sass you up if you come for her is also slapping migrant workers. And so I just wanted to, so my project is essentially, I created a fake brand persona that uses social media in that same kind of way, but doesn't at all disguise how unethical they really act. And so you can go on to the next slide. So this brand is called Real People Co. It's just very on the nose. And what you see here is just like a couple mock-ups of how they would use social media and some like kind of cheeky brand promo things. And so, in my attempt to like mock this usage and this like dichotomy of unethical brand behavior versus friendly corporate social media persona, I wanted to like kind of both be like really obvious with the tweets, like being like, oh yeah, that's funny. That would be funny if you read it online, but like in reality, it's horrible. And also like in some subtler ways too. For example, in the little brand promo to the right, all the images used in the backgrounds are from either labor sweatshops or labor riots that happened as a result of poor working conditions. And so that's kind of like infused within the branding of the company. And that was my thesis project. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John. If there aren't any questions for John? No?
Just more compliments.
Great. Then Kira, go for it.
Hello, my name is Kira Gunn, and for my thesis project, I have decided to explore the harmful effects of fake news, as well as get to the root of this troubling occurrence. Fake news can be broadly defined as false or misleading information masquerading legitimate news. It is typically an online occurrence that is becoming increasingly prevalent, and it's a legitimate threat to democracy, as it has the ability to influence one's political, economic, and social well-beings. My interest in this topic was sparked when I started noticing how polarized people's opinions were on social media, especially around the time of the election, which just so happened to be the same time that we were solidifying our thesis topics in class. I noticed that those of my friends who had the same political views as me would read the same stories and information regarding either party, but those who had opposing views had completely different information being fed to them. I would ask where they found that information, and they would pull up tweets or Facebook news articles that appeared to be legit, but didn't seem to align with the information I was absorbing. This is when I came to the conclusion that we were being shown specific stories and information based on our political views. And the majority of this material would somehow confirm our views, almost like a radical confirmation bias. The crazier the articles about opposing candidates, the further we are pushed into our own beliefs. But politics isn't the only instance in which I noticed polarized viewpoints, and this is when I decided to look deeper into the issue. I knew that this would be a challenging topic to cover due to the fact that it's very difficult to find the truth online. How would I be able to research such a topic if the sources I was pulling my information from wasn't reliable? One source that I've found to be extremely informative is Science Advances, which is an online open access journal founded by the American Association for the Advancement of Science. I began my research by looking up journals regarding topics with titles such as The Spread of True and False News Online, The Anatomy of a Scientific Rumor, Evaluating Fake News Problem at the Scale of the Informational Ecosystem, and more. And I gained a better understanding of the different factors that play a role in the spreading of misinformation online. I quickly learned that false news is diffused significantly farther, faster, deeper, and more broadly than the truth. After one of our first critiques in class, Mark suggested that I get the book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, written by Shoshana Zuboff, and it was from there that I was able to begin connecting the dots between the why and how fake news is produced and spread online. For those that don't know, surveillance capitalism is a new economic order that claims human experience as free raw material for hidden commercial practices of extraction, prediction, and sales. It happens online and it occurs constantly. So every pause to read an ad on our Instagram feed, every click, every search topic that we may type into Google is constantly being recorded and stored so that big companies such as Apple, Google, Amazon, and more take this information and tailor the things we see in order to best reach us individually. This is surveillance capitalism, and it's becoming increasingly more of a threat as technology advances, and it's also one of the main factors playing into the spread of fake news. And this is due to the fact that in our age of information, those who have the best algorithms and the most data wins. But unfortunately, the main threat to all of this is our freedom, and that's because the more that is known about a person, the easier it is to control them. Now, applying this knowledge to the concept of fake news and the spread of false information, it can be attributed to the fact that Facebook and Google in particular have sought to displace professional journalism on the internet. And this occurs because they've put themselves in between the publishers and their readers, which has subjected journalistic content to the same categories of equivalent information being produced under the umbrella of surveillance capitalism. If we think about it, scholarly journalism's main goal is to separate the truth from fiction, whereas these differences are erased under surveillance capitalism. And according to economist Hunt Alcott, this is due to the fact that these big companies are profit-driven and false news demands private and social costs by making it more difficult to infer the true state of the world. And this topic is extremely dense. If I had more time to discuss it, I would. But I'm going to talk about what I've done with all of this newfound information. So I've created a website which acts as a visual walkthrough of the topics that I've been discussing. And after dissecting journals in the book previously mentioned, I have decided to apply my knowledge to this topic in order to make it easier for the average technology user to understand visually. Okay, so if you want to move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Here, I've shown a couple of steps in my process of building a site, beginning with brainstorming and collecting references, and then creating a wireframe for how I wanted the site to look. I wanted to pay attention to small details, such as the way a word appears on a page as you scroll, or the effect that a user's mouse has as they hover over particular elements in order to create a site that is visually appealing while being interactive at the same time to increase the user's engagement. And then you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Ultimately, this website serves as a visual translation of the topic of fake news and surveillance capitalism in order to spread awareness and bring to light the activity that is occurring behind our screens. It's easy to get sucked into the cycle of falling victim to accepting fake news, but the very nature of humanity is currently being threatened by these forces as they are striving to pull us further from the truth, all while convincing us that we are always right, so we never know who to believe. Human behavior has now become a profitable commodity, which is something that we should never be okay with. Once faced with the facts, it's easier to pick up on these schemes and fight back. Shoshana Zuboff claims that surveillance capitalism will teach us how we do not want to live, as it instructs us in the irreplaceable value of our greatest moral and political achievements by threatening to destroy them. Though this website is only scratching the surface of this topic, I hope that it may spark some interest so that others will continue to dive deeper in understanding. And the sooner that we educate ourselves on such a threatening matter, the sooner we will have the ability to fight back. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you, Kira. Any questions?
Just more compliments.
Okay, great. Then we'll move on. Jules, whenever you're ready, go for it.
Hello, everyone. The reason I am alive today is due to in vitro fertilization. My thesis is about spreading awareness and sharing the miracle of IVF and the amazing science behind the process. This zine is a guide to the process as well as a tutorial through the experience. There are many stories and outcomes in the fertilization process for women. The term test tube baby has always had a negative connotation due to the unawareness people have about the knowledge of the process. Enlightening humans about the incredible advancements we have made in medicine and the amazing changes a woman's body can go through during pregnancy is important to discuss. I first got my inspiration from my thesis when thinking about what makes me me or has made me the person I am today. I thought about my mom, who is a nurse, and how grateful she is for her kids. My twin brother and I were conceived through in vitro fertilization, and this process was a chance that my parents were willing to take. Her story of her struggles with infertility has inspired me to acknowledge her struggle and her success. For that, me and my brother are alive, and I'd like to say, as well as she would like to say, I'm a living miracle. A miracle is a highly improbable or extraordinary event, development, or accomplishment that brings very welcoming consequences. You can move to the next slide. Without the advancements in medical technology, I would not be alive. I studied the step-by-step process of fertilizing a woman's embryo, as well as the medication, costs, pre-procedure and procedure month, appointments and hormones, as well as reading different stories of the struggles between partners, as well as the success stories. And to think that the world's first ever baby from in vitro fertilization was born in 1978. And since then, there has been 8 million babies of in vitro fertilization since the world's first. I first started sketching the different steps and the symbols that make up the process, using iconography to show the step-by-step process, visually described the procedures in IVF. I then scheduled how it may look on a brochure as seen right here. Next slide, please. And this is my final outcome. I then thought for a more personal aspect, I would create a zine that could have the procedure and document one schedule. I am also just grateful for the opportunity to learn more about the struggles and pleasures of the in vitro fertilization journey through design. And this is my final zine. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jules. Any questions?
More compliments.
All right, Sam, go for it.
All right, hi everyone. My name's Sam and my thesis project is called Safe Travels. It is a safety and social application for those who are studying abroad. When I love traveling, it's something that's really important to me and my mom, so I knew I wanted to have a travel focus for my thesis project. When I was doing a lot of research on study abroad, besides financial factors, one of the leading reasons why people choose not to study abroad is because of safety concerns. And that's on both ends for the student traveler and for their parents. So I wanted to try to create an application that would ease some of that stress so the student can have a better time and a safer time. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so I have 4 main things that go on in my app. So one is the messaging components. You can message people that are inside of your program, and you can also connect with other people. So say I'm going to Dublin, it'll help you connect with people that are also going to Dublin from Ohio State or Cleveland State or anywhere in the area. The next feature is the itinerary. So you upload your itinerary into the app, and then you can obviously always edit it and go back. It helps you keep on track, seeing what you have to do for that day. You can also link your emergency contacts to your itinerary. So your parents will always have access to that. And you can also set up GPS coordinates. So if you derive from where you're supposed to be, your emergency contacts will be notified, or your advisor, or anything, however you want to set that up. It's really personalizable. The next is the safety feature. So it'll be a safety button, because one of the hardest parts about traveling abroad too is also that I don't know if I'm in London, I don't know what their 911 call is. I don't know how their emergency services work. So this just does it all for you. You release the button and emergency services are alerted, your emergency contacts are alerted, and so on. And then the last component is more of a social component. It's just groups. You can join groups, discover like new places, like access for students. You can make friends and do events. And then can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, and so this is just a little bit more into detail of a couple of the more features. So the groups, you can do event planning on it and just meet new people and come together. And then one of my favorite safety components is that I also included was you can pin drop anywhere on the map of where you are, and you'll get alerts for break-ins, or if there's like a stuff like that, just like dangerous stuff that's going on to the area that you drop it. So you can either choose to not go, or you can put in your own like safety concerns in that. So yeah, that is my project. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Sam. Any questions?
Believe it or not, more compliments.
Max, when you're ready.
Hi, my name is Max Schneck. My thesis is an interactive game made with Unity that walks through the history and important impacts within the graffiti culture, and specifically tagging, in order to change its affiliation from an like subcultural activity to art. I have sample images from the game that display each corner of the map. Each corner is designed and curated for each decade, ranging all the way from the 60s to the 21st century. If you go on the next slide, graffiti can be understood as an antisocial behavior performed to gain attention or as a form of thrill seeking, but it also can be understood as an expressive art form. It has been visualized as a growing urban problem for many cities and industrialized nations, spreading from the New York City subway system in the early 1970s to the rest of the United States and Europe and other world regions. Through the efforts of Banksy and all the world would-be Banksies have so deeply inscribed the coolness of street art into the minds that is now as respectable. These range from design motifs on products to themes on television commercials. Street takeover design uses the history of graffiti and its effects sense to identify characteristics that have facilitated street art's translation into mainstream design applications. Understanding these characteristics can provide designers with a foresight to similar emerging cultural phenomena. Thank you.
Thanks, Max. Any questions?
And more compliments.
Awesome. All right, we'll go next. Now, Jake may or may not be here. Jake, are you here? Okay, well, Jake unfortunately could not make it today, but he did send along some information about his project, so I'm going to read that off for everybody and go through the slides. This project started with the problem of maintaining a healthy level of physical fitness. I have personally found that it improves overall health and quality of life. I started looking into what I could do to create healthy fitness habits. Being in the military, I knew they placed a lot of value on physical fitness. They have invested heavily into research on this topic, and they put in place several strategies to achieve success. By using repetition, a common interest or shared goal, they could encourage better fitness habits. It is also important to mention that the camaraderie with the rest of the team motivates the individual to accomplish goals they might not otherwise achieve on their own. With this direction, I decided that an app might be the best way to replicate this feeling in the current environment remotely. I did a lot of research on what other fitness apps were doing that was working and what was not. I found that they were too clunky, complex, and not user-friendly enough. They didn't seem welcoming or motivating, which is something I saw as key to creating better habits. The pager app was the solution to these problems, simple and easy to navigate. It reminds and encourages you to work through the challenges you set by sending an SMS and tracking your progress towards your goals in the app. It allows you to add team members and keep score of how you and your team are doing. The more you use this app, the easier and more natural your goals will seem. You will be able to look back at where you started and direct you to your goals. So this is Jake's final product. Now, unfortunately, I can't answer any questions if you have questions for Jake, but you can feel free to put them in the chat still, and we can get them to him later. But if there aren't any, then we'll move on. Okay, Abby, go ahead.
Thanks. So I'm Abby, and my project is called A Means of Marrow. So when I was a freshman in college and my brother was a junior at the University of Dayton, he became sick and went into the hospital. And after a lot of tests, he was diagnosed with severe aplastic anemia. This is a condition in which the body stops producing enough blood cells. One of the only cures for this is a bone marrow transplant. I was tested to see if I could be a match for him and donate my bone marrow. However, like in 70% of patients, I was not a match. Ultimately, he went with a different treatment, but I joined the registry myself. And about a year ago, I got a call that I was a match for a 1-year-old patient. I confirmed that I was willing to donate and went in a week later to have blood tests done. The patient's family decided to go with a different treatment, but I got to see how easy the process of donating really is. I wanted this project to show how easy it is to donate bone marrow and potentially save a life compared to what the patient has to go through. I decided to create a website where I could show this comparison. Here you can see process work. I went with hand-lettered text for my titles. I focused the color palette on yellow and blue and made illustrations that represented prevalent objects along the way in the process of donating and receiving bone marrow. I wanted this project to have a humanistic feel because it is about connecting with people and saving a life. You can go to the next slide. Here you can see the website I created, and I included information about bone marrow transplants at the top and sections at the bottom that take you through the steps of donating and receiving bone marrow. These steps are an example of one donor and patient's experience and the vast difference of what they go through. Along with the website, I am running a bone marrow drive right now. You can go to the next slide. So by clicking on the Join the Registry link on the website, scanning the QR code on this page, or texting A Means of Marrow to 61474, or going to the link up here, you can sign up to join the registry. Those ages 18 to 44 are eligible and can easily sign up online. You will be mailed a kit to swab yourself, and then you will mail that back and be added to the registry. You may get a call in a year to donate, you may get called in 7 years, you may never get called, but by joining the bone marrow registry, you have the opportunity to easily save someone's life. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Abby. Any questions?
Just more compliments.
All right, Jess, go for it.
Hi, my name is Jessica, and my thesis project is titled Longer Letter Later. They're a series of postcards that illustrates my relationship with my pen pal. As I've grown up, I've become more aware of the sentimentality that comes with handwritten letters, and this has especially been emphasized by the pandemic. The United States Postal Service has also been affected by the pandemic from cuts to their budget, hours, and employees. But they have simultaneously been receiving an influx of items that have been needed to be delivered. And my hope is to inspire people to consider a return to handwritten communication. My pen pal, her name is Myrna. I've been writing to her since I was 10 years old, and we began corresponding through a program at my elementary school that paired senior citizens with students to read a book together and correspond about that book. And that's where I got the title for my project. The book that we read was called P.S. Longer Letter Later. And I also included a photo of the first time we met in person. But I've kept almost every letter that she sent me over the years, and she also gifted me with a binder full of old postcards and envelopes from the early 1900s that were also a big inspiration for this project. Go to the next slide, please. So these are the first 3 postcards that I designed. I was reading through a lot of our old letters to find motifs and important events of our relationship that I would be able to include in this project. The first one was this hummingbird postcard. I noticed that she would write to me every time she saw the first hummingbird of the season, and she was really excited about it. She has a lot of bird feeders at her house, so that's just something that she's very interested in. So I definitely wanted to include that. My second one is the Longer Letter Later postcard, which I wanted to include because it's the title of my project and it's just a cute thing to have on a postcard. But I also wanted to make it like scratch paper-esque. So it's like you're scratching away the black part with the rainbow underneath showing through, because scratch paper is a gift that she used to give me a lot when I was growing up because she knew that I was creatively inclined. And then the third one on this slide is my take on the paper that was inside one of the envelopes that she'd given me. It's also an homage to the handmade style of paper that I use for my bookmaking process, which I would gift her little like journals that she would use to write things in. If you can go to the next slide, please. Now these are the last 3 postcards that I designed. The first one is the puzzle pieces. We both have an interest in doing puzzles, and whenever we would see a puzzle that we thought that the other would like, we would send it to each other for us to do. The next one is this peace sign puzzle, or this peace sign postcard. This one represents kind of the first time we ever met. She repeatedly mentions in her letters about how proud she is of me and who I've grown up to be. And she always mentions my peace sign earrings that I was wearing whenever she brings that up. So I definitely wanted to include that into the project. And my last one is this stamps postcard. Recently, she had written me a letter and it had this train stamp on it. This is a big train stamp, and I'd never seen anything like it. And it had like gold accents and everything. And I showed it to my roommate and I was like, look how cool this stamp is. And she was like, okay. But then I opened the letter, and on the inside, my pen pal had written that another pen pal that she has who collects stamps sends her stamps every once in a while, and told her to not put them on letters for people that wouldn't appreciate them. And she said that I was the only person that she knew that would appreciate something like that. But this project definitely felt like something that I needed to do. I wanted to immortalize my pen pal's relationship, and she's definitely someone that I look up to a lot in my life. But I encourage everyone to find someone that they can write letters to. It's something fun and quick and easy that you can do. And everyone likes getting letters from someone that they love. That's a feeling that you can't really replace by digital communication or anything like that. So, yep.
Great, thank you. Yes. Any questions?
Just more compliments also on how cute this relationship is that you have and how special.
This is great. Okay, well then we'll move on. Jenny, whenever you're ready.
All right. So hi, my name is Jenny, and this is my thesis project, which is titled Frijon. So that's a term, or it's a French term for aesthetic chills, which I think is a really great way to describe the impact that music not only has on me, but also on brain chemistry. So studies show an influx of the reward brain chemicals, such as dopamine and serotonin, kind of come in a bigger influx, not sure of a good way to phrase that. But basically, when you consume familiar sensory information, like old music, you know, it has a positive effect on your brain. So we all know that everyone loves a good throwback playlist. So basically, to give a new perspective to sharing and bonding through music, I decided to design some visuals in the form of a postcard that contain QR links to corresponding playlists that match from very specific memories from my childhood. So this first slide is full process work pertaining to my favorite postcard, which corresponds to my Car Rides in the Rain playlist. I decided to swatch a lot of colors from photos that I took way too many of when I was in high school of like post-rain scenery. To the right, you can kind of see some of the process work on creating the visual in the first place, which took forever. Next slide, please. So here there's some branding for the concept as a whole. I did create a website that corresponds with this. It is just a mock-up, but you can click through it and kind of go through what that brand experience would look like. So I experimented with a few different types of iconography, which you can see on the left, in order to create this word mark. I decided to go with these muted greens and kind of warmer oranges because I think that they have a good nostalgic quality to them. And a lot of the colors you'll see more of them in the next slide and on the site, but a lot of these colors also correspond with a lot of very iconic 90s imagery, like the crazy bowling alley carpets and all that stuff. So here's some of the final deliverables. This pictured on the bottom is the front and back of one of the aforementioned postcards. And across the top are a couple of different interface shots, two of the site, and then the center one has what each of these, as soon as you use each of these QR codes, that's what pops up. So yeah, this is really important to me because I pretty much grew up on music, and almost every song I remember from my childhood, I can pinpoint like 10 specific memories to. So I just think it's really important to be able to like share music with people. And this kind of brings new effect as well. So yeah, kind of just a different things. And also everyone loves getting mail, and it's just really important to stay connected with people you love, especially in the context of the pandemic. So that's kind of what inspired this.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. Any questions?
Just compliments and good vibes.
Great. Megan, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Lesia. Hi, my name is Megan Wonderly, and my project is called Caring for Kids. I chose to focus my thesis on the subject of child abuse, which is a much larger problem than most people think. Approximately 1 in 7 children in the US are currently experiencing a form of child abuse. And unfortunately, there are likely to be even more child abuse cases that are never reported because children are often unaware that their experiences aren't considered normal. Although it may appear, if you Google it, that there's a number of current child abuse resources out there already, the overwhelming majority of them are directed towards educating adults in the hope that they'll notice warning signs in a child and step in to help their situation, rather than focusing on educating the child themselves. The subject of child abuse is often seen as too difficult for children to understand, and so there's very few actual attempts to find ways to communicate this difficult topic in a way that they can actually understand. And so, as you can see on the next slide, I decided for my thesis to design 2 child abuse educational booklets directed to children, one focused on emotional abuse and the other about physical abuse. Beginning this process involved reaching out to some local professionals involved in social work and child advocacy to help ensure the best language for children between the ages of about 5 and 10, along with visually experimenting to find the best way to visually communicate abuse to where it was clear but not graphic, and to show abuse in an inclusive way that shows that it can happen to anybody. The blue pages being from the emotional abuse booklet, and the orange being the physical. I decided the best way to explain the subject of child abuse was through comparison and repetition. So each booklet displays and describes 5 abusive behaviors and gives examples of 3 positive adult behaviors. Visually, it was very important for me to keep the style fun enough to share similarities with other books designed for children, while also not making acts of abuse unclear. The color blue is psychologically a calming color, which I've used since obviously the realization of abuse in one's life is unsettling to anyone, especially a child reader. And then the orange is used to help keep the character inclusive, and so it doesn't leave any group of people out of the conversation of abuse. Additionally, green and red have been used to indicate okay and not okay behaviors, as you can see here.
And throughout both booklets, I've also included useful resources to learn more about abuse, instructions on how to report to an adult, and repeated validation to help ensure potential abuse victims that what has happened to them isn't their fault. You can also see some additional pages from the booklets on the next slide. But overall, I do believe educating adults about child abuse is very important, but leaving the actual victims out of the education process is a huge mistake. If we stopped trying to educate one another just because something seemed too difficult to do, we would have a lot less done in the world. Specifically with child abuse, if more children in these situations were given something to compare their experiences to, there would likely be a huge increase in abuse reports. And while a resource like this can't simply put an end to child abuse as a whole, it is one step closer to revealing hidden experiences of abuse, putting children into safer households, and simply giving children the knowledge to know the way that they deserve to be treated as human beings. Thank you all so much for your time. And I do actually have the full versions of both booklets on the website here, and that's also going to be put in the chat.
Great. Thank you, Megan. We will move on if there aren't any questions for Megan.
Just more compliments.
Okay. I'm next. If you weren't here in the beginning, my name is Lesia Zapernik. My project is called Phonetica. It's an alphabet memory game that helps beginners who are learning Ukrainian remember the phonetics of the Ukrainian Cyrillic alphabet. While researching for this project, I used a number of pre-existing Ukrainian language books for English speakers, as well as an online Ukrainian language resource. For the phonetic and transliteration portion of the project, I used several pre-existing phonetic and transliteration tables, including the International Phonetic Alphabet, the Library of Congress Table for Transliteration, and the United States Board on Geographic Names Table for Romanization. The visuals for this project were loosely inspired by Ukrainian and Slavic motifs. In the bottom right corner, you will see the final iteration for the card backs. This motif is a common tree of life motif in Slavic folk art. I wanted the visual for this to evoke a sense of stability and comfort. And this particular motif represents the foundations of life and death, as well as the creation of all things. It also is used interchangeably as a goddess symbol, which is oftentimes has the same or a similar meaning. In order to reinforce this idea of stability, I chose to go with a primary color scheme. My goal for this project was to create a less intimidating way to learn a Cyrillic alphabet, as well as a new writing system. So I chose for the main typeface, I chose a serif font that had softer corners, but was still distinct enough to be able to recognize the different letter forms in the Cyrillic alphabet. Let's get to the next slide. In this slide, you can see the full deck of cards. On the left side, it is 33 cards for the Cyrillic alphabet. And on the right, it is 33 cards for their phonetic counterparts. Each phonetic card includes the romanization, transliteration, and IPA version of the letter. Each card also includes an example of what the letter may sound like in an existing English word. Some of the cards also include a special note in the top left corner if the letter sound has a unique treatment. So for example, this particular letter may be considered an R sound in English, but the note at the top indicates it is a rolled R. So it would sound more like a R. To make the game more interesting, I've also developed an optional point system for each card that the players can use during gameplay. In total, there is 33 Cyrillic cards, 33 phonetic cards, and a rule book. The rule book includes a phonetic table, a diagram of the cards, as well as 2 possible games to play using the deck of cards. All of these elements are stored in a rigid box, which you can see in the bottom right corner. And if anyone would like to see the full set of deliverables, there is a link to the Dropbox below and in the chat. And you don't need a Dropbox account to access it, so anybody can look at it. But if you do have problems, you can type it in the chat. But yeah, any questions?
Just compliments for you as well.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you to all who came. We really appreciate you coming today, celebrating with us. If there is anything anybody would like to say, Any questions anybody has? Go for it.
Also, just if you missed any projects or want to check out them again, the link will be in the chat for our full website and you can review anybody's project there.
Yes, yes, we have the link to the website, and this recorded version of the presentation will be up on YouTube, and we will be linking it in our social media Instagram page. And we will also be sending it out to all of the designers. So if family members would like to see that in the future, they can. All right. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great evening.